And sister, your circulatory system is not just blood. It's your heart, it's your lungs, it's your arteries, it's your veins, it's the capillaries, this entire network that keeps life moving through you in a very intelligent way. It's basically like the rhythm and the breath and the pulse that says, hey, you know what? I'm alive. But here's the truth that most women miss. Your circulatory system also carries your emotional and ancestral history. Every breath, every heartbeat, every drop of blood carries messages from your lineage. Messages about love, messages about loss, messages about safety, and messages about survival. When trauma, guilt, the grief, when all of those things go unresolved, they don't just stay in memory. They live in the way your blood moves, in the pace of your heartbeat, in the depth of the breath. And this is especially true when a mother wound exists, when there is restoration needed as it relates to healing a relationship with the mother who was also dealing with her own generational trauma and who did the best she could to raise you. This week on the Sovereign Sisterhood Movement, we're exploring how the circulatory system, the physical system of life, reflects the emotional and the energetic flow of your mother line. We're going to look at how the heart, the lungs, how they all work together as the body's sacred partnership, how generational trauma can block that natural rhythm, and how practices like Kundalini Yoga therapy through breath and meditation and chanting mantra can repattern your blood chemistry and restore the flow of divine love through your entire lineage. Because healing the mother line isn't only emotional forgiveness, it's also biological transformation. And when circulation is restored, love can finally move freely through each generation. So, welcome and thank you all so much for being here. Such an honor to be here back with you with this series that we're going through to explore each of the systems of our body and how generational trauma actually impacts them. This is our movement for first time generational cycle breakers like you who are here to heal 7 generations before and after you. And today I'm really excited to not just share the wisdom and the knowledge around what the circulatory system is, because you don't have to be a doctor or a biologist to understand what I'm talking about. But I'm also excited to share with you the solutions. I'm really excited to share with you 2 specific Kundalini yoga therapy techniques that are going to help you if you yourself are going through blockages, because that's all it is, blockages in this particular system in your body. And this one's really important because if you think about your lungs and you think about the blood, these are vital life force energies within you. And when we don't heal them or when we don't release the blockages of trauma, they cause really serious physical disease. And ultimately, it could be our demise, right? So, one thing we need to understand first, and again, bring your journal, grab some tea, grab some coffee, write notes, all the things I'm sharing with you, you actually know them. So, this is all about remembering. This is about allowing yourself to bring that knowledge from the inner space of your heart so that you can put the puzzle pieces together and see how it all comes together and how we can actually get to root cause solutions. So the circulatory system basically is your body's, think of it as like a transportation network, a big highway, and it includes the heart, which is your central pump. And I'm going to share with you some really amazing esoteric spiritual teachings around the heart, the lungs, and the blood, so you can see just how fascinating and how intelligent your body actually is. So, the circulatory system is comprised of the heart, it's comprised of the lungs, which infuse oxygen into the blood. And this is where we store a lot of childhood trauma. It's also comprised of the arteries and the veins, which act like as a highway, right, to move the actual energies from within. And it's also comprised of the capillaries, which are tiny little bridges that connect every cell to life in essence. So every second, your heart and your lungs are in partnership, and it's happening unconsciously. The heart is sending blood to the lungs to pick up the oxygen, what we call prana, the life force. And remember that prana, life force, because I'm going to share with you the teachings around Kundalini therapy around prana and they relate very much to how we heal ourselves at the level of the heart, at the level of the blood. So prana is like this life force energy, and it's that sends it back out to feed your entire whole body. So the heart sends the blood to the lungs, picks up the oxygen, prana, and then it sends it back out to feed your entire body. And it's an ongoing conversation between breath and between blood. Your inhale brings life in, the heart spreads it everywhere. Your exhale releases what no longer serves. It's a constant like clean cleansing, right? Inhale and exhale. Problem here is that when we have been through patterns of generational trauma, when we have especially a mother wound, which our nervous systems basically were created in a way that we have to attune to our mom's nervous system. So if she was going through her own patterns of trauma, being raised also by another mother, your grandmother who was going through her own trauma, then this inhale, exhale, cleansing does not happen. And then we stay in the same chemicals that our grandma, great grandma, mother have been under, which create the anxiety, depression, and the physical illness. So we're gonna go layer through that, but I just want you to understand that this flow that I'm talking about, it mirrors every relationship in your lineage. Giving, receiving, inhaling, exhaling, love and release. When that balance breaks down through trauma, through living under long periods of chronic stress because of the trauma, because remember, when you go through trauma like physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse as a child, your nervous system gets stuck in fight or flight. So if your nervous system constantly thinks it's in danger, then that's when the balance breaks down. So then what do you become? You become an overgiver, or there's emotional shutdown, right? The whole system is going to suffer because it's all connected. So healing the circulatory system is not just physical. We can't just look at the symptoms. It's ancestral repatterning. It's teaching your body that it's actually safe again to circulate love instead of pain, instead of the illusion of being separate from God. So let's look at how the circulatory system actually works and how trauma impacts it. So first, the heart and the lungs. This is like the most sacred partnership, right? The heart and the lungs are like the mother and the father of your inner world, right? So the lungs receive life through breath. The heart distributes that life through blood, and together they make the pulse of existence. So each time you inhale, and you can even try it right now, your lungs are going to fill with oxygen, right? That's prana. Your blood is going to pick it up and it carries it to all of your little cells. Circulatory system, right? So what it's doing is it's actually using that oxygen to give your cells energy. And each exhale releases what is known as carbon dioxide. And we call that in Kundalini Yoga therapy apana, which is the energy that helps you let go, the release, right? So when you're stressed or you're afraid, you're living in fear, you're living in survival mode, which is what happens with generational trauma. Because the nervous system gets stuck in fight and flight, we basically live in what is known as survival mode. Our brain does not know the difference between perceived and experienced trauma. So, what does that mean? That even if the trauma, the abuse happened 20, 30 years ago, your brain doesn't know that. Your nervous system doesn't know that. So, that's what I call living under chronic stress. And that's what it means to live in survival mode because what's happening inside you, it's a flood of cortisol and adrenaline, which are chemicals that are there to help you when there really is danger. But if you're constantly under these chronic stress patterns, it's constantly secreting those chemicals, which is literally poisoning your body. And that's where that rhythm completely changes. That inhale, that exhale. So your breath becomes more shallow, right? You can't breathe above the belly button. And I've talked a lot about this because that's a big problem. Why? Because, first of all, you're not getting oxygen to the other organs and especially to your brain. You're also like affecting how the other organs even function and work. So not breathing above our belly buttons, which is Very normal for those that have gone through some kind of traumatic experience or who come from a lineage that have experienced lots of trauma, right? Then you're affecting your physical, your mental, and your spiritual health in such a big way. And then think about what happens not only when the breath becomes shallow, your heart beats faster, your blood becomes more acidic. So this is your body's ancient survival patterns. It thinks you're under the same attack. So it's trying to protect you. It's not trying to like take you out. So when that happens generation after generation, it becomes encoded in your entire blood chemistry. Your lineage's version of normal, that becomes an imprint. And that's why so many women feel anxious, depressed, or heavy. Even when life is stable, they're on vacation, trying to enjoy the view of the beach, and they're freaking out World War III happening inside of them, right? Their hearts are still beating to their mother's or grandmother's stress rhythm. And think about it, even in the womb, like you are in constant connection with your mother's heart. And it's the most beautiful thing, right? But what if mom was going through abuse patterns with her husband, with your father? Or what if there wasn't enough food? What if war was happening? Because a lot of this is not just the generational trauma, it's genocide. I think about all the indigenous people that were colonized. I think about all the countries that have been colonized, and I visited many of them, like I've shared with you, like Vietnam, for example. And to hear their stories 30, 40 years later, and how three, four generations later are still impacted by the war that they went through, the fear, the trauma, the losing of family members unexpectedly. So that's why this happens. Your heart, if mom was pregnant with you during time when there was war and there was no food, that rhythm becomes your rhythm. And remember, when mom was pregnant with you, and when grandma was pregnant with mom, you were already inside of mom. So, like, you're picking up your great grandmother's rhythm, you're picking up your great grandmother's rhythm, all in the heart. That's where the nervous system is basically attuned, right? So, there's a huge impact of generational trauma. And science tells us the same thing. Science tells us that trauma changes your blood chemistry, which is very important as it relates to your circulatory system. Don't worry though, we can change all of this, but it's important for us to understand why we feel the way we feel, why the physical illness appears. So the reason that this happens is because the reason that the trauma changes your blood chemistry because it increases cortisol. So cortisol is that chemical that is released when we believe we are in danger, right? So then that helps us take action and move away, right? Or do what we got to do. And when we have an increase in cortisol because our nervous system is stuck in fight and flight, what that does to the blood is that it tightens the vessels and it affects the oxygen flow. And that's very serious, especially for your brain. So, emotionally, what that translates is as a closed heart or feeling always chronically tired. Because what that means is that you have energy leaks. You have unconscious emotions that are moving through your system that are eating up your energy levels, which is why you're constantly needing the coffee or the whatever you do to keep your energy levels up, right? It's a prana issue. It's a life force issue that we're really talking about, and it's directly correlated to the trauma that you've experienced even as a 3-year-old or as in the womb or even that your grandma experienced because we have, for example, there was this Dutch famine study where there was a famine that was happening in Europe, and they looked at generations, 3, 4 generations later, and those generations were still struggling with depression and eating problems. And even if they didn't meet their past grandparents or even knew their story, even if you're adopted, you don't have to know the story of your ancestors or the story of your parents because your personality, your body, like we talked last week with the musculoskeletal system, you can check out that podcast episode. I'll link it below. It's literally like the vibration of the lineage. So we have to look at these things energetically, physically, right? We have to look at all these systems and get to the root cause by looking at it holistically, like body, mind, and spirit. And that's why, one of my teachers in a class that I took as a Kundalini yoga therapist, finishing my program, one of my teachers is Dr. Japakar Khalsa, and she wrote this incredible book called The Enlightened Bodies. And we learned a lot, like in Chinese medicine, about the meridians, which is basically these grid lines, and we call those nadis, which circulate energy. They circulate oxygen, they circulate the flow that moves through the entire body. And in this book and in our class, Dr. Japa Karkalsa explains that, especially the circulatory system, it delivers nourishment and removes waste physically and emotionally. So when circulation stagnates, whether it's because of emotional trauma, emotional pain, which is coming from emotional trauma, or even from physical tension, which if you look at last week's episode, the musculoskeletal system, that's from trauma too. It's not just the car accident you had. It's deeper than that. That physical tension comes from the emotions that are stuck, right? So when that happens, we feel suffocated. We feel physically and spiritually suffocated when the circulation stagnates. And generationally, that might look like you as a woman who are a people pleaser, giving too much, not receiving, right? Not especially breathing above the belly button or holding your breath to keep the peace, because that's a serious problem when it comes to generational trauma. We just want to tuck it under the rug. Nobody wants to talk about these things that happen in the family, right? So what happens over time? The entire lineage forgets how to exhale, how to let go. So restoring the mother line means restoring the rhythm of breath and blood. It's learning how to inhale fully and exhale completely and allowing that flow to return. And I can assure you that 100% of people that have gone through generational trauma are not inhaling fully or exhaling completely. And that becomes a real serious physical problem and mental problem, right? So let's talk about this inhale and exhale from a Kundalini yoga therapy perspective. Because if we look at it through this lens, you're going to see how incredibly powerful re-educating your nervous system through the inhale and the exhale is to completely heal all generational trauma and change your entire lineage. What we know in Kundalini yoga therapy is that this balance between breath and blood is very, very sacred, because the inhale, it draws in what we call prana, right? This divine life force, intelligence, this energy. The exhale releases that apana. So what no longer serves you, right? Inhale, exhale, constantly cleansing. And what's so beautiful about prana and apana too is that with every inhale, we're bringing it into our body, into our temple. With every exhale, we're actually connecting with the unified field, with the unified mind, with God, who's not outside of us, who actually is omnipresent and permeates everything. But when we're not conscious with our inhale and exhale, we're not connecting to that unified mind. It's almost like that exhale only makes it to the programming because we're not breathing above the belly button. And that was one thing that Yogi Bhajan, who brought Kundalini Yoga from the East to the West, he was a tantric master who basically knew that these teachings needed to get out to everyone, not just kings and queens and yogis. And what he taught was that the moment of suspension, so the gap between the inhale and the exhale, changes the chemistry of the blood. And this has been now proven scientifically. So it's in that gap during that stillness that oxygen and prana, what you inhaled, saturate the entire bloodstream. And that's where transformation happens on a cellular level because the blood becomes way more alkaline. So that creates an environment for what? For healing. So in that brief pause and in Kundalini yoga meditation, and today I'm going to share with you a technique to help you with that. The body remembers peace. It's the physical equivalent of forgiveness. The only reason why you can't forgive is because your body is invaded with adrenaline and cortisol, and there is no conscious inhale and exhale that is helping you take out the waste. So if you don't feel safe in your body, for sure, it's like World War III happening inside of you. So even the word forgiveness is going to trigger you in a very big way. But this inhale and exhale, you're rewiring the nervous system, re-educating it to get out of the fight and flight. You're now cleansing and purging, and you're allowing the circulatory system to bring oxygen to the brain, which is also creating new neurons, getting rid of the old highways that don't work anymore, where consciousness used to travel through unconsciously. So, this is a major reset for both the nervous system, your brain, but also your entire lineage. This is what I mean by healing 7 generations before and after you. They're specific, especially we have a protocol for post-traumatic stress in Kundalini Yoga that we use, the 10-week protocol. These are very precise breathing meditations that we do. I don't even like to call it breath work because breath work takes away the sacredness of what breathing is really about. And we have specific chanting that we do because breathing is not just that in the chanting, there is techniques and rhythms that we take on, and there are specific mantras that we use specifically for the heart, specifically for the lungs. In fact, I'm going to share with you one today. But what I want you to understand is that every conscious breath is like a generational prayer. Each suspension is a moment where the blood learns to carry light instead of fear, instead of the program. And this is so fascinating because even when you think about Christianity and religion, they have told us so many incorrect information as it relates even to like the blood of Jesus. We need to understand how powerful blood is, and we need to understand what Jesus really meant when he was talking about that. The blood of Jesus is not even what happened on the cross, it's what happens inside of you when your life force rises from the lower body to the higher mind. In Kundalini Yoga, we know that to be the two triangles, the lower triangle and the upper triangle. The lower triangle, remember we talked about that in the subtle anatomy of your body. You can check that episode out as well. It's here on the podcast. There's a lower triangle with the chakra centers, which are the seven seals in the Bible. And these lower chakras govern the earthly realm, the earthly aspect of who we are, the physical. Then there's the heart chakra, which is the balance point, and then there's an upper triangle, and that upper triangle governs the spiritual realm, right? So what Jesus, the blood of Jesus is not what happened on the cross, it's what happens inside of you when your life force rises from the lower body to the higher mind. Remember we talked about the crystals oil, which is the serpent, Kundalini energy. How do you allow that life force to rise from the lower body to the higher mind? Jesus said, you meditate. When you quiet your senses, that's when you shed blood by releasing your life force energy to flow upward. It's changing the chemistry of your blood. It's changing your hormones. It's changing your nervous system. It's changing your brain. So the blood of Jesus is the Christ within you, the high priest then enters the holy of the holies, which is the right side of your brain, the kingdom of God within. That's why it's known in Kundalini Yoga therapy or in Kundalini Yoga in general. When you meditate, I heard somewhere that there was some kind of study that there was after 3 years, your brain goes in or when you meditate with Kundalini Yoga specifically, meditations, your brain goes into hemisync, where you awaken the right side of the brain and you know how to use the left side of the brain consciously. And that in itself is what gives you psychic abilities because trauma makes your brain stay in hypervigilance of what the next bad thing is going to be that's going to happen. But when you learn to channel energy through Kundalini Yoga meditation, you are able to then recreate the neurons in your brain so that they are going from hypervigilance to learning to live in the gap. What people are saying between the word that they're saying and the next word that they're saying, the middle right there, that if you're able to be in that present moment awareness, you can really understand what the person is saying, not with their words, but with their energy. Or you're an empath, you're a psychic, you have telepathy. All that means is that your brain went into hemisync. That's all that means. And what that means, and that's also what it means to be washed in the blood of Jesus. It's not to worship pain or become a martyr. It's to purify your own life or life current. until it circulates as divine love, your blood through inhales and the exhales through the meditation. That's what that means. And if you think about it from a physiological parallel, there's a connection between the circulatory system and spiritual flow. The heart is the physical pump that mirrors the Christ center. And we're going to talk about the heart next. The throne where divine current circulates, right? The blood carries oxygen, it carries the breath, the spirit, prana through your entire body. But when you're anxious or you're angry or you're fearful because of trauma, that flow constricts. Symbolically, the blood is unclean, right? So when you're in stillness and love, when you meditate, we just shared how it changes the chemicals, right? The blood becomes charged with light, alkaline. It remembers God. So the blood of Christ is actually the purified life current in you. It's your nervous system. It's it's the circulatory energy that is aligned with divine consciousness. And that's what is meant by even in Matthew 6 of the shedding of the blood. It doesn't mean we need to go sacrifice someone. It actually means turning off the five senses through meditation. Remember in Matthew 6, Jesus repeats 5 times, take no thought, take no thought, take no thought, take no thought. What does this mean? Each repetition represents one of the five senses, and we have way more senses and that are developing now as we evolve as human beings. But this is what this meant: sight, sound, touch, taste, smell. That's why he said, take no thought 5 times in Matthew 6. So each take no thought is the closing down of a sensory circuit, the senses. So when you turn off the five senses through meditation, and I'm not saying that every meditation you're going to be able to go into a coma and do this. This becomes way easier as you re-educate your nervous system. At the very beginning of my meditation practice, I couldn't even sit still for 2 minutes. I had so much cortisol and adrenaline moving to my body that my meditations look like this, moving my body around in circles, or just like not even being able to sit still. Now, I mean, I've attended um tantric yoga with Kundalini yoga on the they do this in every summer solstice, and they do the or on the equinoxes and all these special events where it's like a full day of meditation and Kundalini yoga from like 8 a.m. to like 5 p.m. My son and I did that. I've done 2.5 hour meditations while holding my hands up the entire time, 2.5 hours. it it was the practice. It was my ability to re-educate my nervous system that led to that. But when I first started, that wasn't the case. I could not shut down my senses, right? So, and even now, as a long-term practitioner, there are some times where I'm going through grief. My grandmother transitioned 2 years ago. We had a lot of people we had 3 different family members that transitioned in our family 2 years ago, and that was rough. So my meditation practice then was a lot of purging, feeling my emotions, right? Crying, all these different things. Every day you got to take out the garbage, right? And that's why every day it will be a new day in your meditation practice. But what Jesus was saying is like, just close your eyes and go into meditation. And that's where eventually the sensory circuit is going to be able to take no thought. And that's the true shedding of the blood, releasing the life force to enter the holy of the holies. We can't do that if we don't come into stillness, right? So shedding the blood is not physical sacrifice, it's inner stillness. It's the discipline of meditation, where energy once spent on external perception returns inward to feed spiritual illumination. So now let's talk about the heart, because this is a very important part of the circulatory system, and especially a big part as it relates to restoring the mother line from generational trauma. And the heart is one of the most fascinating, intelligent organs in the human body. And most people think that the brain is in charge when they think about, well, who's in charge in their body. But the heart, my God, the heart actually sends more information to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. In fact, scientists have discovered that the heart has its own nervous system, about 40,000 neurons, like brain cells, literal brain cells, right inside your heart tissue. This is why Jesus Christ pointed to the heart. What does this mean? This means that your heart can sense, it can feel, it can remember independently of the brain. Independently of the brain. It processes emotions and it communicates through electrical and magnetic fields that reach up to 3 feet outside of your body. Isn't that wild? So when you walk into a room and you feel someone's energy, that's not your imagination, I can assure you. That is the heart's electromagnetic field in action, which we call the auric field in Kundalini Yoga. So when your heart is actually calm, it sends a really cool, steady signal to your brain that says, hey, we're safe, we're good. But when it's tense or filled with fear, which happens unconsciously when we go through trauma, it's sending these crazy alarm signals that make you very anxious, even if nothing is wrong. Isn't that wild? With those 40,000 neurons, nerve cells, it's functioning way more than a pump. It's processing all this information and it's giving all this information to your brain. And the heart and the brain, they form a system of what is known as coherence. When the heart sends steady, calming signals, the brain and the entire physiology shift into optimal function. But what happens with the opposite? If your heart, and there's literally what is known as a broken heart, this has been proven scientifically. So if your heart is not pumping or it's pumping in the rhythm of stress, of survival, of childhood abuse, of neglect, think about the signals that it's sending to your brain and to your entire physiology. So emotions, they have chemical equivalents that can affect all of our DNA. It can affect our blood chemistry and it can affect the physiology of your ancestry, of course. For example, when we have certain feelings, we create neuropeptides. These are chemicals that go into the cells, and those neuropeptides elicit change on the genetic level. So even your unconscious thoughts are creating a chemical in your cells. This is why we have to be aware of our thoughts, and that's what's developed through meditation, right? You might not be able to stop them, but eventually, when you're chanting mantra, you will be able to change them. Why? Because frequency travels faster to the cell than the chemical. So that means that if you chant mantra, which is what we do in Kundalini Yoga, that frequency, or you're breathing in a specific rhythm in Kundalini Yoga, you're meditating, that's a frequency. So instead of the program getting to your cell fast, what's getting to the cell is the frequency, which is changing the program. Do you see how that works? So the language of our heart, the feelings, the intentions, all of that matters in a very big way. And in indigenous teachings, this was very well known. The feeling is the prayer. It's not just the words, but it's the emotional and energetic state behind them. That's like the fuel. You have a thought, the emotion behind it fuels it to create it into matter. So the human body is part of this bigger field, and the heart's magnetic field, the earth's geomagnetic resonance, and how the heart aligns with the brain body can link us to this field. It's all connected. The Earth's geomagnetic resonance, which scientists now track through the Schumann resonance. And then there's the unified mind that I was talking about, God, that is omnipresent, that is everywhere. If you're not conscious, if you have generational trauma, your heart is just giving out all these emotions of pain, of anger, of resentment. So it's not consciously connecting to the unified field. It's not consciously connecting to God. It creates like a illusion of separation between you and God. And the reason that is because blood and the heart, that rhythm carry those ancestral patterns. How many of our ancestors were told that they were never separate from God? Very few, because of the fact that religion programmed them into thinking differently, right? So think about this generationally. Think about this if your mother or grandmother, if either of their hearts were constantly sending signals of fear, stress, or grief, your body learned that pattern before you ever even spoke a word. And my grandmother always had this heart problem. And one of my uncles died from a heart problem. So imagine, why? There was so much grief. My grandfather was murdered when my grandmother and him were married for a few years, and he left them behind, left my grandmother behind with like 8 kids by herself. Can you imagine the grief that she carried? That impacted my uncle. That impacted all of my aunts and uncles. My mom, of course, right? And then grandma developed a heart problem too. Do you see why? All this unhealed grief. I have so much compassion for that. And that's why there was no heart brain coherence. Think about it. Without the connection of our heart and our brain talking to each other, then what happens? Then it's changing the blood chemistry, it's changing our physical health, it's changing our mental health, it's changing everything. And it changes how our DNA even expresses itself. Because epigenetics proves that DNA expresses itself based on your environment. So if you stay in an environment of a lot of stress and grief, you're going to open up the same DNA genes that your ancestors were operating under as it relates to the trauma, the coping mechanisms, the addiction, all these different things, right? And the thing about the heart, though, is that it's also very intelligent. There's some incredible facts, like I said, about the heart, and one of them is where the heart nourishes itself first. The heart feeds itself before it feeds the rest of the body. I don't know if you knew that. There's this first branch of the aorta. I think I even have a picture, and I'm going to share a picture with you here on the screen as well. Yeah, here we go. This is a great little picture of it right here. So this right here is what I'm talking about. This is the first branch, which is of the aorta. It's the main artery that's carrying oxygen-rich blood, and it loops right back into the coronary arteries, and it delivers blood directly to the heart muscles. So what does that mean? That the heart takes care of itself first, and it's designed that way. Your body is so intelligent and so wise. Why is it designed this way? Well, because if the heart doesn't receive nourishment, it cannot give life to anyone else. It's like the plane. When you get on a plane, what do they tell you? You got to put the oxygen mask us first if there's an emergency, and then you can help others, right? Spiritually, think about it. This is one of the most profound teachings we can all of us can receive, especially as daughters. Love begins with nourishment, not with sacrifice. But many women, especially those raised in lineages of survival, they were taught the opposite, right? To love meant to give everything, even if it hurt. To rest felt wrong. To receive felt selfish. This is the emotional clog that lives in the motherline. The belief that love must hurt in order to be real. But your heart, the most intelligent organ in your body, knows so much more. It's actually showing you through its very design that to keep love circulating, it first has to be nourished. That is divine order. And when you learn to begin to live that way, resting, breathing deeply in meditation, receiving love without guilt, you restore balance to your heart's rhythm and to your entire lineage. Because in yogic anatomy, we also see the heart as the subtle heart chakra, as anahata, meaning unstruck sound. And we see it as the bridge between the lower chakras, lower triangle, connected to the human physical experience, and the upper chakras, connected to spirit. And it's located where? In the center of your chest. And it governs love and compassion, forgiveness and truth. And love has to be cultivated. And when we have this balance, that's where the energy flows through the circulatory, right? The circulatory system is actually working. And it's also flowing smoothly between heaven and earth. You're a soul having this physical experience, right? So it's between your body and your spirit. You can learn to feel calm again, connected, and capable of giving without depletion, which is a big problem when it comes with the mother line. When it's blocked, your heart chakra, by grief, guilt, or resentment, you're going to feel guarded. You're going to feel overgiving. You're going to feel numb. And we work with the heart meridian a lot because in Kundalini Yoga therapy, because it's an energetic pathway that runs from the heart down through the arms and into the hands. And this is where childhood trauma actually is stored. And there's a really good picture of that here. So you're going to notice that a lot of the Kundalini Yoga meditations that we actually do, they work with the hands. Because in the hands, there's a meridian, there's a line, a nadi that carries energy, and it goes from the heart and it actually connects all the way out from the heart through the lungs and to the arms. So a lot of the meditations, which is one of the ones I'm going to share with you today, like the ego eradicator, which is this picture right here. You notice how the hands are raised? Well, that's because it's working with the heart chakra, with the heart meridian, and we learn to open it again. And when we do that, that's when your presence becomes medicine. Because when you're blocked there, because emotions get stuck there, your giving drains you. You're giving from a place of fear or a place of I need to be approved of because of what happened with the relationship with you and mom. Energy is just trying to flow from an empty source, and that's not good. And this is why women in generational trauma often say, I'm tired of being the strong one. Their heart meridian is exhausted from giving love that never returns. So, healing this requires retraining the heart, not to close, but to circulate differently, to receive first, to give from overflow, not from depletion. So, let's talk a little bit about a couple of exercises that are going to help you, or a couple of techniques from Kundalini Yoga that are going to help you with this. So, one of the most powerful ones that we practice a lot is ego eradicator. Now, I will say that this one does come with very, very potent breathing. So if you're on your moon cycle, if you're pregnant or think you might be pregnant, then I would skip the breathing because the breathing is very, very potent. If you're not, then you can definitely start, and you can start with like a minute and take it to 3 minutes, and then slowly, gradually, you can go up to 11 minutes. But you want to start small with this because it's such a powerful changer of your blood. It changes the chemistry of your blood in a very quick way. And what that is actually the ego eradicator, which is actually here at the very front of this picture. This is exactly what the ego eradicator looks like. So as you can see, she's holding her hands up and the fingers are up. And what this is that it balances the chemistry of your blood to clear all these emotional toxins and awakens the lungs and the heart. And the reason that that is because you're raising your hands, right? 60-degree angle. And you're curling your fingertips to the base of your fingers. The thumbs are pointing like straight up. Every time you change the position of your hands, we call that a mudra, and it channels the emotions or the energy in a different way. So when you're curling and you're pointing the fingers up, you're lifting your arms up 60 degrees. 90 degrees is like straight up, right? 60 degrees is kind of slightly to the sides. And the breathing here, this is where it gets really, really transformational as your blood chemistry changes so much. We use what is known as breath of fire. And breath of fire is a breath that comes from deep from the navel. So think of it as like a puppy that is panting after running a lot. So you can open your mouth and pant and really feel the breath coming from the nabi, which is your navel point. So you're feeling that from the navel, right? Now put your tongue inside of your mouth and pump the breath from the navel and bring it through the nose. You can only imagine what that is doing to the chemistry of your blood. Now lift your arms up. That's going to change the meridians, and that's going to change the flow. Now, it is best if you close your eyes and you gaze to the middle of the forehead as well. So what this is doing is that each inhale, each exhale is bringing fresh oxygen and prana to all the organs, but especially to the crown, to the brain. And that's what's changing the chemistry of the blood. And it's what's releasing fear, grief from the meridian lines, right? And it's also called ego eradicator because it clears the false identities that say, I have to fix everyone else first, or all these other things that we do as the good daughter, right? What you're doing is you're teaching your body the truth of divine circulation, which means energy has to move through you, not around you. And so again, with this one, 3 minutes, feel the sensations, feel all the emotions. This is one of those that even right before a business meeting or an important meeting, something somewhere where you're gonna go talk to someone, practice this for 3 minutes. It's a quick meditation to help you bring oxygen to the brain so you can be alert, present, and so you're not operating from your past or your programming, which is what the ego actually is. Now, we also have, like I mentioned in Kundalini Yoga Therapy, specific mantras that help. And we have one that directly opens and strengthens the entire heart's electromagnetic field. And that mantra is one of my favorite ones. It's actually known as the Guru Guru Wahe Guru Guru Ramdas Guru mantra. So what does this all mean? Guru means wisdom or teacher, the energy that leads from darkness to light. That's all that means. Wahe means like, wow, ecstatic wonder, the feeling of like divine awe. So I really feel like that's the English language doesn't do justice to God, and there's no real word for God, right? The closest frequency to me to what God means to me is Waheguru. Waheguru. It's like this divine awe of this wisdom, of this teacher, of the energy that leads from darkness to light. And Guru Ram Das in Kundalini Yoga, we know that he was the fourth Sikh or the fourth Sikh Guru, known as the healer and the Lord of miracles. So when you chant Guru Guru Wahe Guru Guru Ram Das Guru, you're calling on the energy of compassion, of humility, and of service through the heart. And there's even this one specific Kundalini yoga meditation that heals all ancestral karma, where we actually use this mantra as well. Because the vibration of the sound reorganizes the heart's electrical signals and it creates coherence, a state where your heartbeat, your breath, and your brain waves align in peace, which trauma broke that connection, right? So if your lineage associated love with pain or control, what this mantra does is that it reprograms that memory. It works, like I said, on the heart meridian. It works on teaching your heart to give through grace, not guilt, right? Changes the nervous system, it changes the brain. And so you can start chanting this mantra for 3 to 11 minutes with your palms simply resting over your chest, over your heart space. There's others, there's one particular ancestral karma meditation that uses this, and actually you can find it here on the podcast. I'm going to link it below. But this is the actual meditation where you have to use a specific mudra. It's a way that you're protecting your heart through the meditation. You're actually covering your heart with your right hand and you're bringing the left hand behind you. And the left hand is facing to the back of the room or to the back of the wall. So then with this mudra, with the way you position your hand, you're chanting this mantra. And that's the meditation that I practiced for, it was close to a year that put me on my path of now what I do in this world, which is I help women like you break patterns of generational trauma. It's literally the foundation of what helped me break a lot of generational trauma cycles like addiction to alcohol, toxic relationships, healed my marriage, my relationship with my mother, my relationship with my children, right? The whole aspect of healing came together because of this meditation. That's how sacred this is. And if you're a beginner, you can even just listen to the mantra. Guru Guru Ramdas Guru Guru Wahe Guru Guru Ramdas Guru. So it's something very simple to take in. You can even sleep with the mantra on. It's gonna help in such a big way because your body, even with visualization and imagination, your body doesn't know the difference between you actually doing something and just visualizing and experiencing it. So check it out. I'm gonna link one of my favorite frequencies of it below so you can actually practice it yourself. And I would love to get your feedback after you did practice it. So this week, I want you to really, really understand from what I've been talking about on this podcast episode that you do not have to earn love by overgiving. You don't have to fix what your mother or grandmother could not. You are the living, breathing heart of your lineage. Your blood carries both their prayers and their pain, and you get to choose which one keeps flowing forward. Believe it or not, when you breathe deeply, when you meditate, when you nourish yourself first, you are not abandoning your mother. You are restoring divine order. You are teaching the bloodline what true love feels like, safe, steady, and free. So every heartbeat becomes a prayer that says, you know what? It ends with me. And it begins again with love for 7 generations before and 7 generations afterwards. So as you move through this week's teachings inside of the Sovereign Sisterhood movement and what we've been going through with all of the different systems, this week I just want you to remember that the heart is not just the pump, it's an intelligent guide. The lungs are not just organs, they are the breath of the divine within you. And your blood isn't just fluid, it's actually memory being rewritten. So every time that you breathe consciously and you meditate and you feel your heartbeat, you're circulating peace through your body and through your family line. Breath is prayer. Circulation is love in motion. Healing the mother line begins with the heart that chooses to receive. May your blood remember peace. May your lineage remember love, not just for yourself, but for 7 generations before and after you. And I'd like to thank you all so much for being part of our community. Thank you for being part of our live sessions as well on TikTok and in our private Facebook group. If you are interested in learning how to integrate Kundalini Yoga therapy in your life with the Course in Miracles spiritual psychotherapy to help you break cycles of trauma in your lineage for 7 generations before and after you, you're also welcome to join us at the Sovereign Sisterhood Sanctuary, my online virtual movement of women like you, first-time generational cycle breakers, healing themselves and healing their lineages. The link is below in the show description with all of the other resources that I mentioned. I want to thank you for liking this podcast episode. Thank you for sharing it with your community. Thank you for you. And I will see you all next week for next week's new system and how to heal ourselves and 7 generations before and after us. Satnam.